Welcome to Issues and Insights. I am Melanie Parker, your host today. I am the Marketing Director of the Right Legacy Group, a registered investment advisory firm. Today, we are going to be talking about Silverleaf. My guest is their Executive Director, Dr. Jillian Carden. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Glad to have you. It's tough, you say, oh, I'm excited to interview someone. I'm excited about this topic. This is important stuff, but it's serious stuff at the same time. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what Silverleaf is and what you do?
Yeah, so Silverleaf is this region's Rape Crisis and Child Advocacy Center. We're a nonprofit that serves the 8 counties of the Lincoln Trail Ad District.
Wow.
Yeah, and we provide free services to any victim of sexual violence.
So how does someone come to be in your building? Do the police bring them, social workers, a parent, a friend? How do people wind up with you?
All of the above.
Really?
So we have close partnerships with local law enforcement and the cabinet. Sometimes parents give us a call, but we also serve adult victims. So sometimes they're just calling in and wanting to seek services on their own.
Gotcha. So if someone is a victim and maybe leery of getting the police involved, I'm sure that's the case on occasion, if not regularly. If they come to you, is it private? I don't know, how much information do you share? Of course, obviously, I'm sure you would encourage them to report.
So it really is an individual basis, and some of it depends on how old the victim is. But if anyone has questions, they can always call and just ask the questions, and we will advise them however we need to. Just like the rest of the state of Kentucky, we are mandatory reporters when it comes to child abuse.
Sure.
So if it involves a minor, that individual would be encouraged to make a report, but we would also do that.
Gotcha.
If it's an adult victim, adults have the choice on whether or not they want to report.
Okay.
But we can walk them through what their options are.
Right. And obviously, as an outsider, I think, well, of course they'd want to report it, but their situations can be precarious and those types of things, I'm sure. And we certainly don't want to deter anyone from coming in.
Exactly.
Right. So your services are physical as well as emotional?
Yes. So we offer a variety of different services, and everything that we do is free.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So how do you get paid? Where does your money come from? I know you said nonprofit, but how are you all funded?
Right. So we have several different grants that we apply to every year. So we have federal grants. We also have state grants. We apply for local grants. And then we depend a lot on fundraising and donors.
Okay. Speaking of donors, so if someone wanted to write a check, if it's just on their heart to do that, and I know there are a lot of people that happens, where do they go? Who do they talk to?
Well, if someone is interested in donating, we will figure out how to get a hold of that.
Sure.
So if someone wants to write a physical check, they can mail it in snail mail. They can stop by our office in Elizabethtown and drop that off. We love to do face-to-face thank yous.
Of course, absolutely.
But a lot of folks like to do digital. So on our website, there's a donate button right on our website. So if folks want to send it by PayPal or however they want to do that.
Okay, and we will share that website at the end.
Perfect, thank you.
So folks can check that out. And fundraising, what kind of fundraising does Silverleaf do?
So we do lots of different events throughout the year, and we have been for the past few years targeting our fundraising towards a new building. But our next fundraising event is going to be in October on the 29th at the E-Town Con.
E-Town Con. Oh, okay. Wonderful. And what will that entail?
So E-Town Con is putting on a day-long event for individuals who are interested in comics and cosplay and gaming.
Oh, wow, fun.
And so Silverleaf is going to be sponsoring a kid zone, a super kid zone. So kids who are coming to the event who are 11 and under can come to us, and they'll get some free swag, and they'll have some games and just some fun things to do.
Ooh,
and then we will
swag.
Yes, everybody loves swag.
Right.
And then we're also going to have a booth set up on the floor where we're going to be raffling off a signed autographed copy of a book by Larry Elmore.
Okay.
And then some really cool prints that were donated to us by a local artist.
I have some family members that would really enjoy that.
Oh,
I'll
they
have
should
to
come
share
on
that
down.
information.
Yeah.
Definitely.
It's going to be at the Pritchard Center.
Pritchard, gotcha. Wonderful. And, you know, it's fall. Everybody wants to get out and do the fun stuff in fall.
Yes.
Perfect timing. Good
Yes.
job. So where exactly are you located?
So our main location is in Elizabethtown. It's off Provident Way. So that's really close to the Hardin County Government Building.
Okay.
And then we have 2 satellite offices. One is located in Springfield, which is in Washington County.
Gotcha.
And then we have another satellite in Litchfield, which is in Grayson County.
Okay. That's right, because you said you do the 8 counties?
Yes.
So anyone from any of those counties can go to any of those 3 offices and receive services?
Yes.
Okay.
They call into the same number, and then we can schedule at whichever office
Which is more
best for them.
convenient. So what are your hours? I mean, is it like a 24-hour thing, or do you schedule during the day? How does that work?
So for folks who are wanting to schedule, we operate Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 5 for scheduling.
Gotcha.
However, Silverleaf operates a 24-hour, 365-day crisis line. So if somebody is in crisis, they're welcome to call that number.
Good.
But also, there are just some people, maybe they do shift work, they have questions, or they are interested in scheduling, but they couldn't get during that daytime.
Sure.
They'll still talk to a live person.
Wonderful.
And we can get some information from them and get something scheduled that way.
Okay. I know here at your E-Town location, you have some dust going around. What's going on over there?
Yeah, we are so excited. We are building a brand new building on our campus.
Wow,
So
okay.
it's an extension of our current campus, and it's going to be our forensic annex.
Wow, what is that?
So one of the services that we offer at Silverleaf is called forensic interviewing. And so if law enforcement or the cabinet is investigating potential child abuse, whether that is sexual abuse or physical abuse, human trafficking, or if that child may have witnessed a violent crime, they can call, cabinet or law enforcement can call and schedule an interview with us.
Okay.
And our job is to provide hopefully a comfortable setting for the
Safe
child.
place.
Yes, for the child and teenager. Less intimidating maybe than the police station. And our goal is to help that child tell their story.
Wow.
So the new forensic annex is really going to be dedicated to that particular service.
Got you.
And it's going to allow us to free up some space in our current building.
Sure. I am so glad you all are there. I hate that you all are a necessity. Does that make sense?
It does.
Can you share some statistics with us, just broad? I'm putting you on the spot here.
Yeah, that's okay.
Just as far as how many people you service in a month's time, a year's time, and I'm male, female, children, all of the above.
Yeah, so I'll give you some national statistics.
Please.
And then some state statistics as well.
Okay.
So nationally, we know that about 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men will be impacted by sexual violence at some point in their lifetime. So
Wow.
that's a national statistic.
Gotcha.
When we look at Kentucky, those numbers increase to about 1 in 2 women and 1 in 5 men.
Wow.
So sexual violence, and that includes a lot of different things: harassment, assault, rape. It's
there are
a
different
significant.
levels.
There
There are
is,
different
and we
levels.
provide services to all of
Excellent.
those. But it's definitely prevalent.
Really?
And so last year we served almost 2,000 clients where they received a service in our building.
Wow. So in your building, obviously you have employees. Do you also have volunteers?
Absolutely. We love our volunteers.
All right. If someone's interested in getting involved, what would they do? What would that entail?
Sure, they can call our office during regular business hours, but we also have an email address that's specific to individuals who just have questions, and it's contact us at silverleafky.org.
Right, and we'll share that at the end as well.
Thank you.
Sure.
And they can get connected. They can just say, hey, I'm interested in volunteering. And there are different levels of volunteering. Some of our volunteers help with our crisis line and hospital response. And then we have other volunteers who maybe just want to help with projects around the building.
Right, and maybe fundraising.
Yes.
I'm assuming
yes.
that would be somebody's niche who maybe couldn't emotionally handle the things, because wow, what a calling that is to be able to do those things. I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
It makes my heart heavy just thinking about it. I don't know that I would be much help, honestly.
Well, and that's why we try to give different volunteer opportunities,
Sure.
because there are a lot of individuals that work for and volunteer for us that have abuse backgrounds.
Right.
But then we have a lot of people that are not. And so we will work with individuals to figure out where they would be a good fit in our agency. And the same for businesses. We've had some businesses come to us who say, gosh, we can't donate financially, but we offer this service, or we would like to host an event.
Oh, wow.
And so if someone's interested in that, they're welcome to reach out to us, and we'll figure out what that good fit is.
That is a great opportunity. You don't necessarily have to be personally directly impacted by these types of horrific things, but that doesn't mean, well, it sounds like a lot of people are.
I was going to say most of us.
Right, or know someone.
Right,
yeah.
even if you're not a direct victim, statistically, you likely know someone.
You do.
And we even say, you probably know someone even if they haven't chosen to tell their story.
Right, even if you don't know.
Yep.
You know them.
You know.
Yes. Can you share, let's dig a little deep. This is hard. What are some of the signs we can look for? Can you share some of those for a minor?
For a minor?
Yes.
I would say the number one thing is if a child, teenager, adult comes to you and says, I have been abused or I'm being hurt, the most important thing that you can say to them, I believe you.
Awesome.
Those 3 words are the most important thing that anyone can say.
Right.
Because it is in those first few seconds that person has taken the courage to tell you,
Right.
and they're going to be looking for a reaction.
Right.
And so if you can say, I believe you, even if you don't know what else to do,
Right.
but you will, because now you know to call Silverleaf.
In that moment, that's
in that
what you
moment,
do.
that is the very first thing that you need to do. When we talk about minors, what we know with minors is that people who kind of understand that child's baseline. So what I mean by baseline is kind of how they normally function.
Right.
Teachers, coaches, neighbors, and definitely family members. If there is a noticeable change in behavior, physically or emotionally,
Right.
that could be a trigger. Trigger meaning something to pay attention to.
Sure.
There could be some emotional changes where maybe they were kind of a happy-go-lucky kid, and all of a sudden maybe they're really fearful.
Right.
Boundaries. Boundaries are really important.
Okay.
So if a child is overly physically touching, or maybe even touching personal areas on another person,
Right.
that could trigger, something's going on. Any
Sure.
of those things in isolation may not mean that the child's been hurt, but it's definitely something to pay attention to.
Right.
And one of the things that we encourage adults who are close to those children, particularly parents and caregivers, is talk to your children early and often
Right.
about their bodies and consent.
Sure. I didn't understand it at first, but I do now. My daughter's a teacher, and she has taught my granddaughters that if they don't want to hug somebody, they don't have to.
Absolutely.
Now, they always want to hug me. But at first I thought but that's just the world we live in now, isn't it?
Well, and I think that we are empowering kids at a very, very early age that it really is their body and their
Right.
space. So some people are like, oh, that's rude. Like, what if they don't
Right.
want to hug their Mimi?
Sure.
Like, that's
Right.
hurtful. You shouldn't
Right.
hurt your
That's
Mimi's
okay.
feelings.
That's right.
But the
It's
reality
okay.
is, if we set the line at the beginning when children are little to say, it doesn't matter who it is.
Right.
If you don't feel comfortable touching them or being touched,
Right.
use your voice to say, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Because then when they're dating later on,
Good
they may be
point.
more empowered to say, I don't want to do that.
Right. That's a very good point. Yes. I can, yeah, and I had a hard time understanding that at first, but now I honor it. You know, of course, they're always happy and excited to see Mimi. But if there is ever a time that maybe they're just not in the mood, you know, especially once they become teenagers.
Right, right.
Because, you know, we all have laughed and joked in the past about, you know, you have that one aunt who is just scooping you up and squeezing you too hard, and it's funny, and, you know, it's all of those things. I had one of those. And, but looking back, we shouldn't make our kids endure those things, because we just need to honor their space.
And I think it's also important to teach kids about other people's boundaries. So, for example, I've had conversations with my kids, particularly my daughter, because she's a hugger. She wants to hug.
I'm a hugger. But I ask, especially since COVID.
Yes,
may
absolutely.
I hug you?
And so we've had that conversation even with her friends that, well, do you know that so-and-so wants a hug? You don't know that unless you ask them. And the first time I told her that, she was like, that's weird. And I'm like, it's
because
not.
It's inner. I get it. She and I are the same. Yes.
But to be able to say, is it okay if I give you a hug? And making that normal.
Right.
And then if they say, no, I don't want a hug, maybe even offer, could I give you a high five instead?
Right, or bump it.
Yeah, something.
Yeah.
So lots of conversations and just making it normal. The other thing about parents and caregivers is, if it's a normal conversation in your house, that means there's a better chance if something has happened to your child, or even makes them uncomfortable, and that they're going to be more likely to come to you because it's just normal conversation.
Absolutely. I really think it's important to be approachable when it comes to your children. I've raised 3. They're all adults and have their own families now. And there are so many things that I really just didn't want to hear. You know, nothing terrible, but uncomfortable things. But I always made sure I was a safe place for my kids, especially as a single mom, because quite often those are a target for predators. I would think a mom with multiple children on her own maybe could miss some signs. So
or be in a situation where they need that extra support. They need, that's what we saw during COVID, is that particularly with single caregiver homes, that they had to make that choice of, do I go to work and get a paycheck and leave my children with
a neighbor,
somebody, because daycares were closed,
a cousin, yes.
Or do I stay home and work with them through NTI, but oh my goodness, I've got this job over here. And so that was really tough. And unfortunately, what we anticipated at the end of COVID, as we were kind of coming out of that, is we saw a spike in reports.
I hate that. And it's a shame that a parent, it could be a single dad, that a parent has to choose between keeping the lights on and keeping their children safe. That's tough.
Yeah.
There were a lot of things in place to help with rent and groceries and those types of things, but you still have to have those things, and to have to choose. That's tough.
That is tough. Yeah.
That is tough.
Yeah. And sometimes caregivers, it can be easy to judge on the outside of, well, why'd they do that or why'd they allow that. But sometimes you have a choice between 2 not good options.
Right. So. Do you find that a lot of the adult victims that come in on their own, or are they encouraged by a family member or a friend? Obviously, if they're escorted by officials, that's a different scenario. But do you get a lot of calls of people that just don't want anybody to know and they just want to talk to you all?
Sure. I mean, I think that it is a very private, there's a lot of shame and guilt that comes with sexual violence.
Right.
It's clearly never the victim's fault.
Sure.
Ever.
And I think our society has gotten much better about not blaming victims.
I would probably
from the outside looking in. Sorry, maybe
no,
I'm wrong.
Okay. I would have to respectfully disagree with that one. But
I am open to hearing all about that.
But yeah, I think that a lot of times for victims, adult victims in particular.
And I guess I'm thinking about headlines. I'm not thinking about rural Kentucky and those. It obviously is a very different scenario.
Yes. But when adult victims, a lot of times that call comes from a place of, I just know I need to address this.
Right.
So it could have been that the adult was a victim during childhood, or maybe during their first marriage.
Right.
So it could have happened many, many years ago.
Okay.
But they just get to the place where they say, it isn't going away.
Sure.
And I know I need to address
That's
this.
an interesting point, because I sat down thinking, we're talking about people, I was talking about people or thinking about people, it just happened last week or last night or this morning. But yes, healing people that it happened, that is an excellent extra component there. People who just haven't healed all these years, that's fabulous. So that's where that emotion comes in.
And we do provide the services in the immediacy. So one of the things that we do is go to the hospital and provide services at the hospital for victims who come into the emergency room.
And it's so, luckily I've never been in that position, but I can only, so I think it's interesting for people to know that my mind, Silverleaf, I was thinking immediate services. Something terrible happened a week ago, 2 days ago, last night, this morning, but I am fascinated to know and glad to know that you all take care of people that are recovering from childhood, from teen years, years ago. That is so important. It's impactful.
Yes.
Lifelong impactful.
And we do offer the services at the hospital in the immediacy. So we still do that. We serve the 5 hospitals in our 8-county area that have an emergency room, and we'll physically go there to be with the individual and make sure that they have support and,
That's huge.
and the information.
That's absolutely huge. They've suffered a traumatic event, and while I know the police officers are very sympathetic and there to help, and God bless them every day, forever, but I'm sure it helps to have someone there to physically, literally hold your hand and be there for you emotionally, who is either trained and or has experienced these traumas themselves.
Yes, and we get to be that, we get to fill in that gap. So for us, even though we work closely with law enforcement and the cabinet and our local hospitals, when we go to be an advocate at the hospital, our main priority is that individual. And we want to make sure that they get all of the information that they need and feel like they have somebody on their side.
Got you. Now, I'm not sure, and I'm once again going to put you on the spot. I'm sure you know all your stuff, so it's good. What about after that initial physical trauma, the testing, all of that? When it's time, where does your services end? Let's say someone has to go to court. Are you all advocates with them along the way? Do you see them all the way through, or do you hand them over to someone? How does that work?
Sure. Our goal at Silverleaf is to make sure that we enter and exit whenever the victim wants us to.
Excellent.
So we can be there at the hospital. If they are going through court, or if they are at the reporting phase, so they haven't even reported yet, we will be able to walk through that process. So we have advocates that can help the individual file an EPO.
That's a big one.
They can be a point of contact, because when you're involved in the court system, it can be really intimidating.
Sure.
And particularly for sexual assault cases, you might have several different people, law enforcement or prosecutor, involved in your case, and it can be difficult to kind of wrap your head around what all's happening. So our advocates can go out, make those touch points with the other people, and then be able to make one phone call to the victim to say, hey, here's what's going on. And then when court arrives, if court arrives, our advocates can physically be present with them at court if they want them to.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, and to be able to sit with them. Sometimes the perpetrator has more supporters than the victim does.
Ouch. But I'm sure that's true, because unfortunately, in the beginning, I'm sure it's a he said, she said, or he said, she said, she said, you know, whatever the case may be. So yes, and I'm sure there are victims who do not have family support, whether the perpetrator was a part of the family. That could quite often be the case as well. What would you say statistically? I know I hear, purely layman here, that more often than not it's somebody that you know, a family friend, whether it's a minor or an adult. It's more often than not somebody you know.
Right. So I think there is a perception in society, it's probably a desire to believe that stranger danger or the white van and somebody's going to snatch you is
Yeah.
the norm.
Right.
Now,
And,
granted,
I come from the 70s, and to this day, when I see a white van, with no windows, we call it, the raper van, because that's just,
yeah.
that was our mentality growing up, stranger danger.
Stranger danger.
Yep.
And so I'm not saying that it doesn't happen, but
Right.
statistically,
Right.
that happens less than an acquaintance.
Right.
And so whether that acquaintance is a family member or a coach or a member of the faith community, or
Right.
it is easier to manipulate someone when you have a relationship with them.
Right.
And
Crime of opportunity.
yes, and so if that perpetrator has access to, often it can be over a longer period of time.
Right.
So again, talking to caregivers and being mindful about who has access to your children, including teens.
Right.
And in what manner, including social media, because
Right.
that is a very real way now where children are
your kids.
developing, and adults too,
Right.
connections and can be manipulated.
All right. Well, I'm afraid we're out of time. Let's recap real quick. How can people get in touch with you?
Lots of different ways. Our website,
Okay.
silverleafky.org, or our 24-hour hotline, which is 270-234-9236.
Okay. All right.
Anytime, any day.
Gotcha. Folks, if you need them, they are there 24/7. And thank you. Appreciate everything you all do, everything that your staff does, your volunteers do. It's good information, and I could talk to you all day.
Yes.
There's so much more. I'm sure we'll have to do this again soon. And everybody, October 29th, look for that fundraiser right at
Yes.
Pritchard Community Center.
Yes, E-Town Con, come out and see us.
Yes, sounds great. I'm Melanie Parker. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.